Joining me today is author Deborah Mandel, PhD, and the title of her book is Sassy and Rude. Are you ready for the ultimate revelation in mother daughter relationships? Dr. Deborah Mandel does a deep dive into the shocking truths of mother daughter dynamics and uncovers her 3-step plan to heal broken bonds and create unbreakable connections. Exposing untold stories of feuds, dismissals, and the path to reconciliation, she teaches us to break free from the too nice mom syndrome, eliminate the shame and guilt we may feel, and discover the keys to a treasurable connection with your daughter. She's a nationally renowned psychologist with over 30 years of experience, bringing her no nonsense yet compassionate approach to the forefront. Dr. Deborah has been featured on national television and radio shows as a relationship expert. Welcome to the show, Dr. Deborah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you. Okay, I guess my first question, Deborah, is it this too nice mom syndrome that's really the culprit that keeps us from connecting with our daughters?
Yeah, let me explain that a little bit and give you a little background if that's all right. So, the too nice mom syndrome is basically, if you understand the word nice, literally it means pretending not to know. And that is the actual definition. So, when we tell people to be nice, we're basically telling them to don't really tell your truth, but how do we learn how to tell our truth in a way that is kind? So kind is actually a better word, but the too nice mom is always running around trying to do everything for her daughter, not understanding that setting boundaries and being, having a backbone and having your own needs and opinions are important, not to the level of narcissism, but certainly where you also matter. And so, too many moms are running around from their own past, where, just like myself, where we felt unloved, our moms were preoccupied, they didn't necessarily want to be a mom, and they didn't really pay attention to us at all, and it was all about them. So, the Too Nice Mom is kind of a pendulum swing to the opposite side, and the daughters grow up feeling a lot of entitlement, a lot of grandiosity. This is all about me. They don't really know how to share as well. They become overly needy and greedy, and not all of them, but to that degree. Does that make any sense?
It does make sense, but I want to get back to the mother. I see the result of the too nice mom syndrome and what happens to the daughters. But do you think that also when mothers are too nice, they're afraid of their, even from the beginning, afraid of losing the love of their daughters or that they're so that they acquiesce all the time, acquiesce to what their daughters want. And because they're actually afraid of losing them.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Afraid of losing their love, afraid of losing their approval, because unfortunately, the too nice mom is often unconsciously using the daughter to repair the wounds of her own history, where she didn't feel some of those experiences with her own mom and wanting to make up for it and wanting to not make mistakes. I have to tell you something though that's very cute, a little side story. When my daughter was 4 years old and we were at a supermarket and we were in line, and this is all about this concept of being nice. And so she's right in front of us is a gentleman who does have a pretty large nose, and my daughter reaches out and she touches his nose and says, "Mommy, this is the largest nose I've ever seen, or the biggest nose I've ever seen." And I was mortified. I'm thinking, oh no, all these people are watching me. And I'm thinking, okay, am I supposed to just tell her, oh, honey, be nice, be nice? I didn't. Instead, I said, oh, and this gentleman was so sweet. He goes, I know, come here and touch it. Look at it. It's very big. Yes. And he was so sweet about it. And it was so lovely. But it was one of those moments where I could have taught her just like I was taught, was be nice. It's always told, be nice, be nice. Don't tell anybody what you really are thinking or what you really want. So, just in line with the question that you're saying, as the mom, if we're doing that pendulum swing and we're thinking, I got to just be nice and I don't want to lose the love of my daughter, it's just a whole conundrum that doesn't really yield to very effective parenting.
And so this gentleman was actually making a very sincere, honest connection with your daughter.
He
I mean, he,
was.
yeah.
But you know what the key was? Here was the key. He didn't have shame about it. And that's a big feature in the book is talking about shame versus guilt and how many people are walking around feeling that they're not good enough, they're not worthwhile. These moms are thinking that I'm really not good enough, so I have to overcompensate more and more and more. And this guy, he was just at ease. I mean, clearly he understood that she wasn't shaming him. She was simply noticing, just like if she were to see a red wagon and say, Mom, that's the prettiest red color I've ever seen, right? It didn't have any judgment to it. It was just an observation.
Let's talk about the shame and guilt that mothers
Yes.
feel. And I guess I'm wondering, is some of that shame and guilt perhaps related to what mothers are, I'm going to say forced, but they have maybe not the options to stay home and with their kid, or they feel they should be home with their daughters all the time. They're not. They're working. They're doing so many things in terms of taking care of the family, so they feel guilty, and then they overcompensate by being too nice.
Well, unfortunately, shame shows no favoritism to a working mom versus a non-working mom or of different generations. Shame is that experience that I am wrong, I am bad, I am not good enough, versus guilt, which is that I'm not doing something well enough, or I did something wrong, or I didn't, or I made a mistake and I have remorse and I want to change that. But shame is to the core. That's about one's being. And a lot of moms who are parenting that are too nice, they're compensating for their sense of internal, I'm not okay. I'm just not okay because maybe they had an abusive history. Maybe their moms told them things like, you're stupid, as was very common in my family. You're stupid, you're not enough, you're this, you're that. And so you walk around with this sense of, I'm really not okay, but you want to hide that because now you're a mom, you have this huge responsibility. So you don't want to walk around saying to your daughter, I'm not good enough, will you help me feel good enough? So it gets camouflaged in the ways in which we parent and the way we feel about ourselves, which is why it's so critical in our journey of healing our relationships with our daughters is that we identify our own shame and we need to heal that. We cannot impose that on them to do that for us. And also, if we don't do that, we end up almost always passing that along to our daughters. Even if they are cocky and sassy on the outside, they may internally feel also a deep sense of inadequacy or that they're not enough, especially if the expectation is that they're supposed to constantly be nurturing their mom who doesn't feel good enough, and then they love their mom and they want to be there for them, but then they're losing their own ability to develop. And that's why a lot of those kind of acting out behaviors that I describe in the book of the sassiness come out because they're trying to fight for their own survival of their own identity and independence.
So in your journey or in the evolution of your momhood, I would say, at what point did you realize or have some awareness of what you were doing and the need to change?
Yeah, so I did grow up in a family where both my parents were immigrants, and my mom, like I said, I don't know that she really wanted to be a mom. She was a pretty high functioning person, all independently, and then my dad came along and he wanted the traditional role of her being a wife and a mother and not working, etc. And she stayed at home, and she was just resentful and miserable, and she had a lot of control issues, and she just was not a happy person in so many ways. And she actually died very young at age 58. And I was just in my early 30s. And my daughter was only about 2 years old. And I was a single mom at the time. And I said, wow, I never got to heal from my mom. And the last words she said to me when I was trying to get her help for various things was that I was the worst daughter on the planet. Now, mind you, I wore that for quite a while. And then in reality, I did so much for my mom and trying to please her. I mean, every Mother's Day, every birthday, I saved all of my allowance, everything to buy her the best gift. It just was never good enough. I was not going to be able to make her happy. And so I got very clear at that time that I did not want to pass that on to my daughter. I did not want her to feel inadequate. I didn't want her to feel bad. So I had already done a lot of personal work on shame in my own therapy as becoming a psychologist, but I knew I had more to do. I knew I had to dive deeper into how that was any remnants of that was going to manifest in my own parenting and relationship with my daughter. And by the way, it was a work in progress. I didn't do it perfectly by any means. I made lots of mistakes, but by healing the shame, I was able to acknowledge more readily and more frequently along the way when I made a mistake in parenting her. I didn't have to have her hold that or be the keeper of that or have her wonder about that. I could say, you know what, honey, I think I didn't manage that very well, and I wish that I had been a little bit softer on you. Or actually, I wish I had set better boundaries with you. I was able to go to both directions. And that was so important. And that's what prompted over time. as she became a young adult, like, no matter how much I did here, we still have this sassy and rude issue going on here. Maybe it's time to write a book about it.
And so, well, that's a good ending or a good beginning, I should say. Yeah, right. So your daughter, so where is she now? And she was, you were able to do this. I'm using the word repair work, but you did that. And as you're saying, it's a process that goes on and on. And so, what's the relationship now as a result of all that you've done together?
Oh, thank you for asking that. My daughter is it's always a journey with her. She is not your traditional mom. I'm going to, by the way, let me just give you a little history. In high school, this girl ran herself ragged for what reason I don't know because it was not my imposition on her, but she got all A's in all honors classes, AP classes, etc. Got the gubernatorial award, etc. Went to college for photography, dropped out after a year, and has never gone back. So, why she needed to do all that, it was not my pressure for her to go to an Ivy League school or a four-year college or anything of the sorts, but she'd had to take her own journey, and she's a very independent thinker and a very independent-minded person, and she is on her own healing journey. She loves to do healing work with women. She's done photography. She's an artist. She does sacred femininity work with people. She does Ayurvedic healing, which is ancient Indian, excuse me, ancient Indian medicine. So she is just she's just doing her thing. And I had to learn a long time ago when she told me she was going to hitchhike across the country alone that I needed to let go of any control that I wanted to have over her. So it's been a journey, but we've done so much work in terms of talking to one another, healing together, breath work together, yoga together. Even though she's up in Sacramento, and many times in the last 10 years, she's lived across the universe. She was stuck in Egypt for 2 years by herself for some time during COVID. She's just an adventurer and an explorer, and she's taught me a lot about myself as well, about how much I have needed to control things that I really don't need to have control over because I don't have it anyway.
No, yeah, and you've done a great job, obviously. And but yeah, I'm also thinking, you're talking about how her education, how successful, and all of those kinds of things. But you, mom, you're a PhD, so I mean, there is that um, sort of understanding that she's looking up to you and wanting to emulate your work too.
Thank you. Yes, I think there is a little bit of that. I don't know that she would have ever admitted that at 19 or 20, but maybe there was a little bit of that. And I think today, yeah, she's very free with her words to share her praise for me and her love for me and her acknowledgement for me, which is so beautiful. And one of the parts of the book that I added in at the last minute that I thought was really cool was I had my daughter enlist some of her friends and some of my nieces who I adore and I helped to raise as well to enlist some of their friends to answer some questions that I had for them about their relationships with their moms and the things that they loved about their mom, things that they wish would have been different, things they wish would never change about their mom, things that they wish would change. And it was so beautiful. I thought that I was going to get a lot of angry birds who were going to say, kind of really nasty things about their mom because even though they had maybe conflicted relationships with their mom, that deep love that's there is so precious. And that's so much about what the book is about, is to really capitalize on the love that's there that just may be getting lost in that conflict, that back and forth, that power struggles and all that stuff, and trying to give people tools on how to manage some of those inevitable experiences that are going to happen in a close bonded relationship, and not to be scared of that, to be patient with that, to understand that, to look forward to that, and to unravel that in a way that really brings some healing and sheds some greater light on that love that's really there.
What happens, Deborah, though, when, we all, and I'm using the word backslide, but, stuff happens and sometimes you get back into some of those old habits and you have to take a look at what's happening. And what do you do then? Because it's not always going forward in a positive direction.
Oh, great point. 100%. I certainly don't want anybody listening to get the idea that this is a journey that's a straight line. Unfortunately, it's more like the stock market. We go up, we go down, we go up, we go down, we go
That's a good
backwards.
analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is because it's not a straight line at all. But is it over time? Are we building momentum and building progress? And again, when we heal that shame, which is so important because shame closes our world, it doesn't allow us to see past what's right in front of us and our own pain. So as we push through our shame and we learn to be self-compassionate and understand that we're doing good, and most of us have really good intentions, if not neutral. So we bank on those and we understand what those are. And if we make a mistake, then we can say so. We can say, you know what? I don't think this is going so well. I don't think I'm doing my part, honey. I'm enlisting you to share with me. Please tell me what it is that you prefer that I would do better. By the way, remember this book is for mothers and adult daughters. There's some ideas in here that probably wouldn't translate well to a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old because we do have a much greater responsibility over the behavior and the well-being of our youth. But once somebody is an adult, we really have to recognize where we have control and where we don't, and where is our own accountability and responsibility, and to not do the blame and shame game, and instead, acknowledge that which we can, like, oh, I think this is my part, and encourage our daughters to do the same.
Okay, so you have a three-step plan, and maybe we can talk about the three-step plan and exactly what is that for
Okay.
healing these broken bonds.
Well, I'm going to be candid with you. I love that my publicist keeps putting this into
But you don't want to
a.
talk about it.
No, no, it's not that I don't want to talk about it. It's that I didn't write about a three-step plan. I
Oh,
don't know where they got that, and I keep telling them to please take that out. But
well,
I'm
that's fine.
happy to give you three steps that are very significant and helpful in the process. It's just one of those, it seems fitting, right? So let's just go there. I
All right,
would
let's,
say
yeah.
let's just go there. The three steps, I think, or the three aspects of this journey that are so important is one is identifying our own historical wounds, and that's our own responsibility as the mom. I need to say, here's where my childhood may have affected me in my adulthood in the ways in which I parented. I want to take that which is good. I want to kind of neutralize that which is not so good. And I need to heal my own resentments and my own anger and my own stuckness in that so that I can be free and clear to make good decisions in the present with my relationship with my own daughter as an independent entity. It's not always the extension of that from which I have grown, but it can be new and refreshing. So that's the one piece, identify our own wounds. I think the second piece is learning intensely about self-love, self-compassion, because that's what translates into compassion and love for that which is in front of you, which we may not really like, and we
Okay.
can make changes in that. And then the third would be patient, practice patience. Rome was not created in a day. And so a relationship that's maybe strained with our daughters is not going to change overnight. And if we push too hard, we push for too much, we're likely to get our hearts broken again. So we need to be patient, and I'm going to add in another piece that is really important. Understanding what our expectations are, and that goes hand in hand with patience, because expectations are resentments under construction, and resentments are like swallowing poison and waiting for the other guy to die. So if we start becoming resentful of our daughters because they're not being a certain way, they're not living up to the ways in which we think they should, we need to be very close at monitoring what those are, how we're conveying those, and whether they're reasonable or not. If we have an expectation of somebody that we haven't made known and it's unconscious and we're just hoping that they're going to fulfill it and then they don't, we're going to get really disappointed. And that's not fair to them.
So that's really a four-step program, and I think
Yeah.
it's really, yeah. But I think the last point is really important because that's really critical, understanding as mothers what our expectations are. And how do you introduce that? How does that conversation come about with your daughter? Um,
There's no rocket science here. I think in a healing process, we call upon our daughters, whether we say, "Hey, I'd love to have a conversation with you. I've noticed that I've had some expectations of you that maybe aren't reasonable. I want to talk about those so we can get those on the table and see moving forward what we really want for our relationship. What makes sense? Let's say I have a daughter, I don't yet, my own daughter, but stepdaughter for sure, a child coming on the way, right? A baby's coming into this world. And maybe I expect that I'm going to be full front and center involved in that experience. Well, maybe my daughter wants a more private experience with her partner and doesn't want me in the delivery room or doesn't want me to be there 100% of the time. I have one client I'm working with right now who is going to be giving birth in about a week from now, and she's a little bit strained about her mom wanting to be there 100%. She doesn't really want her there. It's not that she doesn't love her mom, but she really wants the private experience with her wife, where she has done so much to get this, to be pregnant with fertility, etc. And she just wants that experience with her. So we were working on ways in which for the daughter actually to go to the mom and help the mom have more reasonable expectations. So it can go both ways. So I hope daughters are listening too, because all daughters out there have a mother, even if the mother's gone, and all mothers out there had a mother. So this goes in multi-generationally, that we can all speak up. We can all talk about this.
So we have to be aware, I guess, is what you're saying. Also, always be aware. I mean, I don't mean that you can't be spontaneous, but really be aware of where you're coming from. And then you have the ability to be able to connect with your daughter in a realistic way,
Yeah.
even if it is painful.
Kathryn, 100%. Absolute self-awareness is so important, and yet it's very challenging for most of us. Again, I'm going to underline that shame. The shame is what drives us to be in denial, to develop defenses, to not be real about ourselves. So when we have practiced that compassion and that self-love, and we can really honor who we are, we can look at ourselves and say, you know what, this part has to change, or this part is okay. Change happens when we accept what is. So the more we can accept what is, the more opportunities we have to make changes and actually really plant those seeds for a healing tree.
You mentioned be patient. That is critical. What do
Yes.
you do? What do you do when you feel like I'm not being patient? How do you, and I'm going to use the word calm yourself down. Okay, wait, be patient. It may be over the long term, it may be in the moment.
Absolutely. Well, if it's in the moment, then taking a pause, taking a deep breath, asking oneself, what are my expectations? Because it's our expectations, if they're not being met, that leads to anxiety, that leads to impatience. And so, therefore, we want to really take a look at that and honor what those are, and then assess whether they're reasonable. If it's long-term patience that we're lacking, then that's a more global view, and we need to really look at what's in front of us. Who is our daughter, right? We need to take into account who is this young woman in front of us, or maybe an older woman. Maybe somebody's now 70 and the daughter's 48. That's not so young anymore, but it's still an opportunity to make changes. A lot of people think that it's too late. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Why not? Why not? Why not grow at any point in one's life?
I think that's a really good point, Deborah, because all of us are living so much longer. You have mothers and daughters in their 70s and 90s and 60s and 80s and very, very long-term relationships that may need working on or repairing. And it doesn't end at 50 or 60.
Absolutely, which is again why I wrote this book for adult daughters and their moms, because this can cross over decades of time, and it's not too late. Yeah, people get stuck in their ways. People say I can't change or I don't want to, but the truth is that at any moment, if we have a new perspective on something, if we're willing to look at things in a different way, we can have a different outcome. And it takes, we can always be the ones to start. Maybe our daughters are not going to be that receptive at first, but that's why being patient is important, because if you keep showing up and you keep demonstrating to your daughter that you are there for the long haul to make this a better relationship, and you're going to factor in who your daughter is and what she needs as well, I think it can be really magical.
And we only have a couple of minutes left, but I just want to comment on one of the things that you probably that I think you said in the beginning. If you don't do this and you don't work on it, and your daughter has a daughter, and your has a daughter, all of this stuff is, I think now the word is intergenerational trauma. It keeps on repeating itself, and it doesn't stop with you if you don't work on the issues that you've been talking about and that you discuss in your book. Title of the book, Sassy and Rude. And I've been talking to the author, Deborah Mandel, PhD. Deborah, give us, websites to go to, platforms to go to, more information about you and about the book.
Absolutely. So Sassy and Rude, her new attitude. It's a tough love guide for moms on how to bring back the sugar and spice in their not so nice adult daughters, and it goes both ways. So it's a beautiful read. I think it's really valuable. It's got lots of exercises, sugar and spice exercises, different tools and things that you can do. So it can be a little bit of your guidebook and teaches you how to journal, etc. You can find me on the web at drdeborahonline.com. DRDEBRA online.com, and all my social media handles are there. And the book is available on Amazon and other booksellers, retail sellers. And so actually it's not in bookstores, it is online. So
Great. Thanks so much for being on the show today.
thank
Lots of
you.
good information, and obviously there's lots more in the book. Thank you.
Thank you.